Good morning, third grade. Today is Monday, April 20th, 2020. And our reading objective for today is to use a flea map to gather information from a text. So we learned that a flea map is used to organize our ideas before we write an essay. So as you watch this video, you will need a reader, a piece of paper, and a pencil or something to write with. So if you don't have those materials, go ahead and pause this video now and get those materials and come back when you're ready. So in order to write an essay, we need a question or a prompt that we're responding to. So in this case, the prompt that we're looking at today says, Chapter 12 in the reader and the video, I Wanted to Go into Space, both teach about Mae Jemison. Write an essay that tells what you learned about Jemison and her role as a U.S. astronaut from both texts. Be sure to include examples from both texts to support your answer. So now that we have our prompt, we know that we're going to think about what is it that we learned about Mae Jemison. But before we can even jump into answering the question, we need to make sure we have our flea map ready. So take your piece of paper and make sure you put a rectangle at the top for your introduction. And then underneath that introduction, make sure you put two boxes, one box for reason one box for reason two, and then underneath both of those, 3 lines for each one of your reasons. 3 lines for each one of your reasons. These are going to be where we're going to put our examples. And then a box under that for your conclusion. Make sure you use the entire sheet of paper so you have enough room to write down all of your ideas. So go ahead and pause the video here and go ahead and draw out your flea map and come back when you're ready. So now that our flea map is all ready, we're ready to write our introduction. Remember, our introduction restates the question and introduces the reader to what it is we're going to be writing about. So let's look at the prompt again. We know that we're going to use chapter 12 and the video, and they're both going to teach us about Mae Jemison. So we know that that's one part of what we're going to have to talk about. But the question says, tell what you learned about Jemison. So going back to our introduction box, in this box, I'm going to start with the sources. So we have chapter 12 and we have the video. So I'm going to say in chapter 12 and the video, I wanted to go into space. And remember, it said they wanted to know about what we learned. So I'm going to say, I learned many new things about astronaut Mae Jemison. And I can say that she's an astronaut because it told us in the prompt that she was an astronaut. So it's okay to put that in my introduction. So now I know that I'm going to use chapter 12 and I'm also going to use the video. So for this box, I'm going to go ahead and put that, I'm going to focus on chapter 12 first. Today, in this lesson, we're only going to look at chapter 12 and then tomorrow you'll look at the video. So right now we're going to see what information are we going to get from chapter 12 that we can tell our reader that we learned about Mae Jemison. So go ahead and pause the video here and make sure you have your introduction and your first box done. So now that our flea map is done, we're ready to start reading chapter 12. Chapter 12 starts on page 78. So as we read, we're going to think, what are some things that we need to add to our flea map about Mae Jemison? Here we go. Chapter 12, Dr. Mae Jemison. Do you know what a role model is? A role model is someone who sets an example for others by the way he or she lives. Many students admire people who are famous athletes, movie stars, or singers and use them as role models. They see them on TV and in newspapers and in magazines and decide they want to be like them. But some of the best role models are people that you probably would not see on TV or in newspapers. They have jobs such as doctors, teachers, or policemen. Some are scientists and astronauts. One such person is Mae Jemison. So we haven't learned anything really new about Mae Jemison, so I think we're ready to go on to the next page. So now we're on page 8. Mae Jemison was born October 17, 1956 in Decatur, Alabama. Her family moved to Chicago, Illinois when she was young. Mae always took great pride in her schoolwork. She was interested in science, but was also interested in the arts. She finished high school early at the age of 16. From there, she went to Stanford University in California. Most college students focus on only one topic of study because college is so challenging. May focused and excelled in two topics of study: chemical engineering and African American studies. After Stanford, May entered medical school to become a doctor. She wanted to use her medical training to help people in Africa and countries where people were poor. So she joined the Peace Corps as a volunteer. Healthcare in Africa was often not very good. May treated patients and also helped train other healthcare workers. She worked hard to improve healthcare in the countries where she worked. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to think, what is something important that I learned about Mae Jemison that I can add to my flea map? Well, I think the first thing that's really important that really stood out was that she finished high school at the age of 17. So going back to my flea map, right here, I'm going to say Mae Jemison finished high school at the age of 16. I think that's a pretty big accomplishment. So that's the first example I'm going to put on my flea map. Now, let's go back to the chapter and see if we can find anything else. We're now on page 82. So when we read this page, I want you to think to yourself, what else can we add in our flea map as an example of something that we learned about Mae Jemison? After the Peace Corps, May came back to the United States. She set her sights on a different goal. Her greatest dream was to become an astronaut and travel into space. She decided to apply to NASA to become an astronaut. But the first time she applied, she was not accepted. Instead of giving up, she tried again, and NASA accepted her the second time. She was one of only 15 people chosen from a group of 2,000 people who wanted to become astronauts. Her training to become an astronaut was hard. She had to get into great shape and train to get used to being free of the effects of gravity in space. She also had to study and pass many tests about space travel. Mae Jemison succeeded in both. So let's go back to our flea map. Now, on your flea map, on the second line, what's something that we read in the chapter that we can add to our flea map? So go ahead and pause the video here and see, what's something interesting that I learned about Mae Jemison that I can add as my second example for chapter 12? Come back when you have finished that. Okay. So if you have something like this is what I wrote. Maybe if you have something similar to this, you were on the right track. Mae Jemison was accepted by NASA after she applied the second time. On that page, there are a lot of different things you might have been able to gather, but that's what I got. So let's go back to the chapter and continue reading. We're now on page 84 to see if we can find one more example of something we learned about Mae Jemison. In 1992, May was chosen for a mission on the Endeavour space shuttle. A rocket launched the Endeavour into orbit around Earth. May became the first African American female astronaut in space. The mission was to study the effects of weightlessness on plants and animals. May conducted experiments during the mission with fellow astronaut Jan Davis. They collected information that the scientists at NASA could study. The mission was a great success. After her successful mission, May retired from NASA. She became a professor at Dartmouth College, sharing her love of science and space with other students. She also started her own company called the Jameson Group, Inc. May's company continues to work with people in poor countries, searching for ways that science can help improve these people's lives. Mae Jemison is truly a role model that we can all admire. So we're ready to go back to our flea map and thinking about what we just read on page 84. What are some things that we can say are examples for this last example on our flea map? Okay, so for my last example, I put in 1992, she became the first African-American female in space. So if you pull some type of important example of something you learned from that chapter, that means you got that last example and you're ready to move on to your exit ticket. So today for your exit ticket, you're going to take a picture of your flea map that you just did with your introduction in chapter 2. Remember, chapter 12. Remember, today we only focused on chapter 12. So you need to have your introduction and chapter 12 finished for today. So you need to send a picture of your flea map to your teacher. You can either text it to them, put it on Flipgrid, or some people have uploaded it to Google Classroom, which is okay too. All right. So have a good day, third graders. See you tomorrow.